Greetings everyone, this is the Average Antiquer here, and I have a new video here for you today, and this will be going over Dr. Barton. He is, without a doubt, one of my favorite tool manufacturers of the 19th century. Very high quality draw knives, as well as other woodworking tools, which we will delve into. I will show you some examples of some of his draw knives, some double-edged draw knives, and some specialty ones, as well as some information to go back on him. Without further ado, let's roll into it. Now, before we delve into any examples, I'd like to tell you a little info on Dr. Barton himself. Now, Dr. Barton was born in July 4th of 1805 and eventually died on April 26th of 1875. He would go on to have around 6 or 7 co-partners of different tool companies, which you'll see lots of different marks for his tools. Like I said, 6 or 7 different partners through his life. So there's a lot of varieties going around of these tools, and a lot of them can be worth a lot of money to a lot of collectors. Now, one of his first partners was John H. Babcock, which he later worked as a blacksmith for the Dr. Barton & Co. company. They would start around, at least together, they would start around 1832, so only around 1834, and they mainly focused on axes and other edge tools. And some of the marks you'll see with them would be the regular Dr. Barton and possibly J.H. Bacon. Next manufacturer we're going to talk about is Barton & Smith. They only started around in 1842, which they made primarily bits, edge tools, and wooden planes. Some of the markings you'll see with them would be Barton & Smith, Rochester, and both with S backwards. Next, we have Barton & Belden. They stuck around from 1844 to 1848. They would be fairly successful to the point where an actual English toolmaker copied them and marked copies Rochester pattern. They primarily made axes, Cooper tools, draw knives, and edge tools, as all the others. Identifying marks for these you'll see would be Dr. Barton and I. Belden, which stands for Ira Belden. And he was also a hardware dealer operating out of Rochester, but it is not known if this was after or before the partnership with Dr. Barton. Here we have David R. Barton & Co. This was around 1849 to 1874. They focused on a little broader spectrum of things: adzes, axes, chisels, draw knives, hammers, hatchets, picks, tinsmithing tools, as well as your carpenter's wooden planes, molding planes, along those lines. Their marks would be Dr. Barton without the Co. and Rochester with and without New York. Some included 1832 and some a star figure. There was a variety of shapes used with the lettering straight line, oval, and half circles. It had 2 partners, William R. Mack and Royal L. Mack. They ended up taking over the company in 1874 and renamed it Mack & Co., which would be used until 1929. Next one up we have is Barton & Milliner. They stuck around for only around 1863. They focused on edge tools, but the partnership was formed while Dr. Barton was with Dr. Barton & Co. The relationship between two companies isn't that clear. Joel P. Milliner had earlier had his own edge tool business in Canada, Joel P. Milliner & Co. The last one I have here is David R. Barton & Tool Co., which was from 1874 to 1880. It premierized of augers, axes, Cooper tools, edge tools, and wooden hand planes. And it would go under the lines of Dr.Barton, 1832, with a Rochester, New York, an oval shape, with the top and bottom lines curved. Now, David R. Barton and his sons, Charles and Edward, formed the company after Dr. Barton was taken over by the Max, which I previously stated. It was also bought out by the Mac and Co. in 1880, who again continued to use the marks. So the mark Dr. Barton, 1832, Rochester, New York, was used by Dr. Barton and Co., Dr. Barton Tool Co., and Mac and Co. A little more history on Dr. Barton himself. Like I said earlier, he was born on July 4th of 1805, and he was born in a small town along the Hudson River, which later his family moved to Homer, New York, and then eventually to Rochester around his 21st birthday. David would start his trade working for Mr. Thomas Morgan. Morgan occupied a small blacksmith shop. This blacksmith shop will be built around 1820-ish. Records that I've found have only shown that Morgan really only produced nails, which at that time was a very large commodity for the village. And the blacksmith shop would actually end up becoming a marketplace and a supply center. Basically a stepping stone for the settlers pouring westward, especially after Erie Canal provided a transportation artery for all Northeasterners to all of the North Central and Western territories. Edge tools started making their way into the business in around 1824-ish. And at around 1824, and around January, Henry Strager announced taking over the edge tool portion of his venture. In 1825, Morgan was an agent of Seth Silby's Axes, so a close association with edge tools making was present in his shop. This is where most likely that Dr. Barton learned most of his apprenticeship from during the years that they started delving into and with the association with Selby's Axes. Now, to end this video off, I'd like to show you guys a couple examples of some Dr. Barton tools I've acquired over the years. Sadly, I don't have any wood. The only woodworking tools I have are just drill knives. Example we have is a fairly late Dr. Barton, I believe. You can see here the Dr. Barton and Rochester very lightly. This, I believe, has been ground out almost and has been counter-stamped. Now, whether this was someone who owned the draw knife or possibly someone who bought a collection of them and restamped them themselves, I have no idea, but the counter stamp goes all over. There's one right there. Some type of stamp there, but has been cut off due to someone ground out. And one thing you'll see on a lot of Dr. Barton is they have double bevels. They aren't completely flat on the back. I forgot to tell was the length for that blade was around 6 and I believe 3/4 was the last time I checked for the blade length, if any of you guys wanted to know that. But here is another example of a type of cartouche. This is the round type. Now this one is very worn out and poorly stamped, so you will barely be able to mark out, but you'll see a lot of them have this type of round stamp, or they'll have the Dr. Barton and Rochester Co. Those are usually the two most common ones. Now this one is particularly for chair making. It has got a curved cutting edge, as well as the double-edged or double beveled edge. And another great way to identify Dr. Barton tools is by the handles, and the part comes out. Handles will usually all be hand turned, and they'll come out to a point, as you can see better on this one. It will bell out, and then the tang will be folded over. Going back onto the other example, this one has it a lot more clear. The bell out, it rounds off, and let's see which side it's on. You can see the lathe turning marks to where it was in a chuck. Lastly, we have a fairly large draw knife. The only reason I know this is Dr. Barton is by the style of usually having a round or octagonal bar that basically aligns with the cutting edge and down into the handle. And as you can see with this one, it's very hard to tell. This one's very old, probably most likely one of the earlier works. It still has the original lathe indents. And the only other reason I know is just because of the style handle, which bells out and the tang curls back in. If any of you guys know what type of draw knife this is, I'd be very curious myself. I imagine this is for either bowl carving or spoon carving, but I'm not sure what exactly they're called. I usually don't. This was the very first one I've seen around here in my area, so if any of you guys could help me out with that, I'd greatly appreciate it.